You have stopped donating and fundraising for the GOP because you're upset with them right now. What is your beef?
Yeah, so just to be clear, I'm happy with the RNC and I'm happy with Speaker Ryan in the House. I'm really more frustrated with the Senate. And my beef is it's time to do something. It's time to accomplish something. Let's get tax reform done, and I think the time is now.
Give us a for instance. I mean, what does the corporate rate need to be at 20%? Period? Or
yeah, no, I
is
think
that an example
I think
of what
it
you're
needs to
after?
be at. Yeah, well, I think it needs to be at 20%, and I think that we need to use the majority, which we haven't really done very much at all this year. And I think we need to use the majority to pass pro-growth, economic measures so we can move the country forward and people can get higher incomes and businesses can invest, and we can have something to run on.
A lot of people are concerned about what this will do to the deficit. Are you concerned about that?
No, I mean, I think that's something you got to take into consideration, but I think the primary motive here and the primary driving force should be what's going to create more economic growth, and I think that's cutting the corporate tax rate, and I think that's lowering the tax rate for middle-income Americans.
On that point, Mr. Eberhart, explain to me how this impacts middle-class Americans, specifically. If you don't believe, let's assume, just take the tax bill in and of itself. Let's assume that it doesn't create this 4 or 5% economic growth in GDP terms that President Trump thinks. Let's assume that it bumps up growth a little bit. How does this create prosperity for middle-class Americans?
Well, two ways. Number one, I think you're gonna have lower rates and you're going to have less deductions and an increase in the standard deduction. So it's going to be simpler and lower, and that's going to be easier and more money in people's pocket. The other way is, with companies like mine, if we can expense with the 100% expensing provision in the new tax bill, we're going to spend more money, which means we're going to need to hire people and increase our labor force, which is also going to indirectly put more money in people's pockets.
We're kind of there, aren't we? I mean, we're on the verge of tax reform. I mean, how big a threat is this really?
Yeah, well, I think we are there. I think we're on the cusp of an investment boom, as Larry Kudlow has said. And I think that if we don't do it, I think that this tax cut is priced into the market. And if we don't do it, then I think the markets fall, and I think it leads to lower investment, lower capital investment in fiscal 2018.
I was going to say, the source of your frustration, seemingly the Senate, I mean, clearly they are, with one ear at least, listening to various constituencies, concerns about perhaps the implications or maybe the unpopularity of the bill. Do you think that those political concerns are going to be overcome, or do you think that they're legitimate in the first place?
Well, I do think they're legitimate. And look, I think tax reform affects everybody. I think it's, it impacts more people than anything Congress has done in the past 5 or 10 years. And I think that this is important, but I also think it's important to show the American people that the Republicans are going to use the majority to pass, pro-growth, pro-economic growth measures. And I think that we need to do that to show, why we should be able to stay in the majority moving forward.
One of the precepts of the whole deal is that by putting more money in the pockets of the corporations is that they'll create more jobs. But they've got a lot of cash on the balance sheets as it is. And what they're doing is they're doing buybacks and they're increasing dividends. They're not increasing jobs. What is it about this tax reform bill that you think will get them to actually create jobs or build more factories?
Well, again, I think it all works together. I think if they repatriate. If they can repatriate the foreign earnings, I think that that's going to be an incentive for the very large multinationals that are based in the U.S. to spend money here as opposed to building that factory overseas. I also think that the companies running a more optimized balance sheet where they give money back to shareholders via buybacks or other measures is going to lead to money being returned to investors who are then going to invest in other things. And in addition, I think the expensing provision and the increase in the deductibility of the pass-throughs is going to lead to small businesses and medium-sized businesses investing more in plant and equipment and buildings.
You mentioned you're unhappy with the Senate. Just how unhappy? I mean, are you like Steve Bannon? Do you hate Mitch McConnell?
Yeah, well, I don't know that I would go so far as to say I hate Mitch McConnell at all. Look, I think what he did with Gorsuch was brilliant, and I think that was a high stakes game that he won. But I'm ready for another win, and I think the time is now. I think we need to get tax reform done, and then focus on an omnibus bill or a CR so we can keep the government funded, and then push all these other measures like DACA and the Defense Hawks wanting more money, and the House Freedom Caucus wanting lower spending, to push that stuff into 2018.